are joined on the current by local attorney Andrew Calandro from calandrolaw.com. And he has his Master of Laws in Taxation. And one of his main areas of practice is estate planning. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Thanks so much for being here, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Roxanne.
Before we get into the heavy stuff, I want to hear what made you decide to be an attorney. What was it about practicing law that appealed to you when you were growing up and you said, this is the profession I want to pursue?
Oh, my gosh. It's a little embarrassing, actually. I remember specifically the moment when I decided I wanted to be an attorney. I have two older brothers, and they used to always pick on me a lot. And one day they were playing, and they wouldn't let me join. And so I went and I told my mom, Mom, Matt and Chris won't let me play with them. And my mom said, you know what? Life isn't fair.
Oh.
And I was so sad. I was 4 years old.
And you took legal action against your brothers.
No, but it made me decide at that moment that I wanted to help people make life a little bit more fair.
I love that.
For people who can pay me enough.
Of course. That is part of the deal. Well, we're talking about something today that is a heavy subject, and maybe it's something not everybody wants to talk about. It's not exactly cheery, but it's a necessity. It's something we all have to do if we want to live and go to sleep at night in peace, and that is estate planning. Give us just a really broad definition of estate planning.
Well, estate planning, when you hear that term, a lot of people think of an estate as like a mansion, a sprawling manor with acres of land.
An estate.
An estate, exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. But an estate in this context really means everything.
Sure.
All your possessions, from your house, your car, your clothing, your personal items, the cash in your purse, your very expensive looking purse. I mean, even I saw a homeless guy coming in here today, and he had a bag of cans, and that's his estate.
Sure. That's his stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's his stuff. And
you have to wonder what is going to happen to my stuff when I'm not around.
Yeah, and so that's what estate planning is. You plan not only for what happens to your assets, but also what happens if you have children, what happens to your children when you die. It goes hand in hand with retirement planning, life insurance, and healthcare decisions as well. And I kind of break it down. Basic estate planning, something that everyone needs. Everyone needs a will. I recommend to most clients that they also get a living trust, and also these healthcare documents.
So a will, a living trust, and healthcare documents. What do we need to know about each of those categories?
Well, will and a trust, again, those are things that help you dispose of your assets, and there are many important reasons to have those, and I hope you invite me back sometime because I would really like to talk about those important things. But there are some very critical things, some very crucial things that everyone needs to have done right away.
Okay, what are those things that you need to take care of just right from the get-go?
Right away, everyone needs these, the healthcare documents. And I use this example a lot. If you're familiar with the name Terry Schiavo.
Yes.
It happened right here in this area.
So tragic. A lot of people know about this story.
It was horrible. And if anything, hopefully we learned from the situation. So she was a woman in her 20s, lived right here in St. Pete, and just one day, unexpectedly, otherwise in good health, she collapsed in her home. She had brain damage. She was in a coma, and then she was diagnosed to be in a persistent vegetative state.
And it was a battle between her family, between her husband and her parents as to how she would continue.
That's right, exactly. And that's because she didn't have these healthcare directives in place. And so that's why I think it's very important that everyone gets these things done now. There's a couple different documents that would have helped that case, saved her family pain, saved resources, saved public resources. The first thing is a healthcare surrogate designation. These are both really simple documents here. The healthcare surrogate designation, you want to pick somebody who will make healthcare decisions on your behalf when you're unable to. And generally, these decisions are withholding treatment,
Sure.
consenting to treatment, transferring or admitting you to a hospital, and also applying for public benefits on your behalf.
And so that healthcare surrogate obviously is going to be that person, whether it's a spouse, a sibling, a parent, who's going to know what you would want to do in certain situations.
That's right. You want to make sure it is somebody who knows your wishes well. And if you don't have these documents in place, the government decides for you who is going to make these decisions. And maybe they're not the best person
No.
to do that. If you don't designate one, the courts usually look to family members, parents, a spouse if you have one, brothers, sisters, but those aren't necessarily the best people to make such a decision. You want to look for certain qualities in a person to be your healthcare surrogate. First of all, you want to make sure that they know and understand your wishes. You also want to make sure that they don't have any differing religious or moral beliefs that might conflict with your wishes. Yeah.
Yes.
And then probably the most important thing you want to look for in a healthcare surrogate is someone who's able to make these tough decisions when they're under the emotional stress.
I was just thinking that. So even if you know what someone wants and they've outlined it for you, you might go by way of the emotional answer, which isn't really what the person wants. So you have to have that understanding in place prior to.
Exactly. You kind of want to think about maybe someone in your life, a friend that knows your situation, knows what you want, someone who's close to you. If you're maybe engaged and you're not yet married, you want your fiance to be your healthcare surrogate. Or for whatever reason, if you're in a long-term relationship with somebody and you choose not to be married at this time, or because of discriminatory laws, you can't be married to your partner. So this is a great way to choose the person who is right to make these decisions on your behalf.
That makes sense.
So they're not going in cold. Of course, you would express your wishes to them, and you would also direct them with the advanced directive. That's the second document I'd like to talk about.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, a living will.
Yes, a living will.
Yeah. And with the living will,
because they always ask you that whenever you have any sort of surgery, they'll say, hey, do you have a living will?
right, and they require usually, even if it's just outpatient surgery,
Right.
they require that you have it. But again, like the Terry Schiavo case, she was in perfect health. She wasn't having surgery, and it just happened all of a sudden. So she kind of needed that stuff done. Everyone, I recommend that anyone over the age of 18 gets at least these documents done.
Sure.
And so with a living will, if you don't know, you decide under certain life-threatening decisions what kind of treatment you would like to have done. Those certain situations are going to be if you have a terminal condition, an end-stage condition, or, again, like Terry Schiavo, if you're in a persistent vegetative state.
So it sounds like the living will kind of works in conjunction with whomever you've listed as your surrogate.
Absolutely. In fact, if you're in one of those situations that you choose, the doctor who's treating you and a consulting physician both have to determine with your health care surrogate that there is no medical reasonable probability of you coming out of this situation.
I see.
So pretty much it's just saying that you don't want to be kept alive by artificial means if something happens to you.
Got it.
I can't think of a worse situation than being conscious for those 15 years as Terry Schiavo was, if she was conscious, and not being able to communicate with the outside world and just being stuck.
It's
in prison.
tragic.
So that's why those two documents are very important.
Absolutely. You know what? It's interesting, though, because how do you bring up these kinds of subjects with your family? Again, touchy subject isn't really the right word. It's just a depressing subject, but it's got to be taken care of. What are some good ways to kind of bring those ideas up with your loved ones?
It really is a tough thing to talk about. You know, the holiday season is a perfect time to bring these things up. And you might be thinking, you know, that well, I'm with my family and I don't want to talk about these depressing things. But really, I mean, when they're with you, it's a perfect time to talk about it because you have all your loved ones around you. You're thinking about wanting to protect them and everything like that. It is a good time during the holiday season to talk about it when you have everybody around and you're thinking about how much you love these people. I would recommend, in a specific way, I would recommend maybe during or after a meal. People were more agreeable. People were happier then when they're just eating. There's a couple ways that you could bring it up. I recommend number one is having it done yourself. Lead by example. Have it done by yourself and then bring it up and say, hey, I have these important things that I just got done, and I think, this could benefit all of you as well. Maybe another way is just to say, hey, I was listening to The Current the other day, and star of television and radio, Roxanne Wilder, was speaking with this very intelligent and handsome sounding man about this subject, and I think we should talk about it.
That's one way. That's one way to get into it. Yeah, that'll do the trick. So what about, Andrew, I do have to ask you as well. It's important when you're going to make these documents or when you're going to work on your estate and your will that you talk to somebody who is qualified. What are the things that someone would want to look for when they're looking for that person to help them with their estate planning?
Well, of course, I would recommend somebody who practices this area of law, somebody who has a lot of experience in this area of law. If it is a difficult decision for you, of course it is, you want to speak to somebody, maybe an attorney that offers the services of meeting with you and your family and facilitating this discussion.
Okay, so we're talking about all this, the big setup for how we're going to talk to our family about what makes sense for us in our estate planning, in our living will documents. But the key word here is documents. This isn't just a conversation that can be had or record the conversation. We need to get this in writing.
That's right. That's right. You want to make sure your family knows your wishes. That way there's no legal battles afterwards or legal battles to prolong the process. But yes, you must have these documents in writing and properly executed. That's why you want to speak with an attorney that knows what they're doing and knows how to make these documents properly
executed so they hold up in court.
Exactly.
Well, Andrew, this has been great information. We really appreciate talking with you. And curious, where can we find you online? How can we reach you?
I've got this information and a lot more at my website at calandrolaw.com. It's CALANDRO law.com.
Thank you so much for talking with us today. Great